review of what I was about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of The Unemployed Value Diligent Substack, former finance professor, former financial advisor, and a current undervalued small cap stock analyst. None other than Mr. Steve
Daniel,
Farrington.
thank you for having me. It's a huge pleasure.
Welcome, Mr. Steve, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, no, I write this newsletter on a platform called Substack. It's a fantastic platform. We're shifting from this Web 2.0 world where everybody works for big corporations to the Web 3.0 world where everybody's in charge of their own enterprise. Everyone's an entrepreneur and they own their own audience, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's an incredible platform, and I'm just humbled to be a part of it.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Steve. Thank you. And today let's talk about your unemployed value diligence. What is all about?
Yeah, every day I'm turning over rocks, looking for new opportunities, finding unique and interesting companies. The small cap space is so interesting because there are companies that have no analysts. When they have earnings calls, sometimes there's nobody to ask any questions. It's is kind of the wild west of opportunity to find things that the companies are too small for the large money managers to care about. So you have the professionals can't swim in the swimming pool if it's too shallow. They need to have something very big. So it's really the last kind of the wild west of opportunity for a human being to sit in, dig in, and have an opinion, and sometimes be right and sometimes be wrong. And yeah, it's just a fantastic space.
Fantastic indeed. So the unemployed value combines three loaded words. Break down this identity for us. So how does being unemployed become strategic position, and how does the value coexist with the degeneracy in this context?
Yeah, so I definitely, it's important to have the degeneracy there because sometimes things are mispriced. The value and degen go together. If something, the price is wrong, it's usually because it has problems. And some kind of problems go away on their own, and some kind of problems are going to stick around for a while. So, for example, we're entering this time period where, we're finding out that, for example, the ISM manufacturing survey, it broke out above 52 for the first time in 3 years. We're coming out of a 3-year manufacturing recession. So when I was writing about industrial companies and chemical companies a few months ago, the problem is we're in a recession, but this problem is going away. And we're about to be in a new atmosphere. We have interest rates being cut, 100% accelerated depreciation on equipment. We have reshoring after COVID. People want to bring the factories back home. These companies have problems, but sometimes the problems are going away. That's what makes value and degen go together. And the unemployed, I'm just delighted to be able to do this full time. I was after I was a financial advisor, I went back to grad school. I became a university professor in finance. I was told that it was like a family, that no one had ever been fired. And then they got a new president who saw things differently, and she was in charge of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then suddenly contracts stopped being renewed. So it was a surprise, but I would have never taken it upon myself to be an entrepreneur, to become a writer, to find an audience if I didn't have that kick in the butt. So it ended up sending me up the river and not down it.
Interesting, Mr. Steve. These persona emerge from crypto digital culture where irony is armor. What sincere belief or critics about work, value creation, and modern economics lie beneath the surface of this seemingly iconic identity?
Yeah, it's I had a suspicion I needed some kind of a mascot. Did you ever? There's an old date night movie from France called Amelie, and in it, She steals her father's garden gnome and gives it to an airline stewardess. And then the father, who has a fear of traveling, he keeps getting postcards in the mail of his own garden gnome in exotic locations. So I made a mascot and I use an artificial intelligence image generator to take my mascot and stick him in with all the companies that I write about. And what's amazing is in the finance world, nobody has any personality. They all just use text on background. Nobody has any fun with it. And I maybe I'm alone, but I seem to be the only one having any fun.
Indeed. So, how do you define value in a landscape where traditional metrics like salary, job title, corporate hierarchy has been rejected?
Well, value is tough to define. It's really about looking for things where um, either everybody's wrong or everyone hasn't looked yet. So, for example, we're in this artificial intelligence revolution, and I don't know tech. I wasn't smart enough to know that GPUs were going to be the bottleneck and everybody needs to buy Nvidia. I wasn't smart enough to know that memory was going to be a bottleneck and everyone has to buy a Micron or SanDisk. But I was smart enough to know that we're going to need all the electricity we can get for the next 5 years, and it will come from every source. It will come from solar, it will come from natural gas. And GE Vernova, they saw the artificial intelligence revolution as if the circus had come to town. And GE Vernova said, we're not going to expand capacity for a temporary event. And so if they can't get new natural gas turbines, there is a company, it was my best performing choice of the year 2025. It's called Babcock and Wilcox. They're a 160-year-old steam boiler company, and they can do the engineering for electricity coming from steam boilers. And if GE Vernova is not going to make any new natural gas turbines, then I thought that Babcock and Wilcox would have work to do either coal restarts or coal conversions. And come to find out, the demand for electricity is so strong, they've now had 2 new build contracts to build brand new power plants to use 160-year-old steam boiler technology to generate electricity. And in the year 2026, we're going to generate electricity with steam turbines. It's kind of wild. But this stock has gone from $1.50 a share to $10 a share. And it's all about, taking your macro view of the world, what's going on, artificial intelligence, and taking your own circle of competency. What are the industries that I can understand without a background in technology, without understanding software, and trying to find things that that to your best judgment are going to work out. And that's what I was able to do with Babcock and Wilcox.
Very well said, Mr. Steve. So, is unemployed here a voluntary opt out from a broken system or a forced position that's been reframed as a strategic? So, what's the difference between being unemployed and being anti employed?
Yeah, I know there's that fire movement, financial independence, retire early. Now, I wasn't, I probably am not young enough to call it retire early, but it is, you know, it's fantastic to not have a boss. It's fantastic to have, 6 or 7 thousand subscribers that would all have to fire me. So I avoid talking about politics too much, anything that would make a couple thousand people want to click unsubscribe. Um, but it's really fantastic. I mean, even if you are independent, what I find is that I live in Florida, and there are a lot of old people in Florida, a lot of retirees, and you know, not having something to do, you see people waste away pretty fast. So I think whether you want to be financially independent and retire early, or you want to be self-employed, I think it's a part of the human condition that we have to find something to be productive and something to do all day. What's fantastic about it is not having a job and being able to do research all day, and to not have a boss breathing down my neck, and to live life in control of my own destiny. I have that unemployed as a little bit of a badge of honor.
Congratulations, Mr. Steve, for being you. So, how does one exercise the deeply ingrained Protestant work ethic that equates time spent with value created? What practice or mindset help maintain conviction during inevitable doubt?
Oh, you know, it's it's kind of interesting because there is a disconnect between adding value and seeing transformation and finding opportunities, because there's an element of luck about it. And I was lucky enough to spend a couple years living in East Asia and meeting some of the business community, and even some geomancers, and getting their attitude toward luck. And there are some aspects of luck in the West and the East that are the same. We have an old saying, I think it's from Abraham Lincoln: the harder I work, the luckier I get. And when I was new at this, if I found an idea that was really good, I would think it was so precious and so rare that I would get upset if somebody else wrote about it after me. And now that I've been at it for a couple of years, I know that I'm always going to find more ideas. There's just more opportunity out there. I don't have to be jealous or guarded with them. So I know that there's so much opportunity in the market that I can get lucky again, and that's fantastic.
Fantastic indeed. So, Mr. Steve, what does a productive day look like for someone embracing this philosophy? How do you measure progress when traditional KPIs no longer apply?
Well, the biggest sign of success for me is that we are homeschooling our two kids. So during the day, it's an awful lot of being a soccer dad. I get most of my writing done for my Substack after the kids are asleep. So, probably from 11 in the evening to 3 o'clock in the morning is my quiet time, my writing time, because I don't really find that it's possible to work from home when you have small children in the house. And we had this big work from home moment surrounding the coronavirus time, but I don't think it's possible when you have children that are 6 years old and they're running around, and they don't understand why you're not playing with them. They don't understand why the door is shut and you don't want to be with them right now. So it's definitely work from home is a very strange moment in time.
Indeed. So, every dozen needs a runaway. How do you think about financial sustainability, savings, side hustles, investment strategies while maintaining this identity? Where is the line between strategic risk and actual financial danger?
Yeah, everybody has their own appetite for risk, and there are stereotypes that young people like risk and old people don't. But I've met people in their 20s that want to be the most conservative investors you could imagine, and I've met people in their 80s that just want to go to the casino and gamble. Um, for me, I think especially for young people starting out, it's important for them to learn to love saving. And what I recommend for young people is to focus on stocks that pay dividends, and don't put it in a retirement account. Don't put it behind some wall that you're not allowed to touch. Make sure that those dividends get swept into your debit card, get swept into your checking account, and make sure that your phone buzzes and vibrates and sends you a text message every time it does. Because after you keep getting text after text after text, this stock that you bought paid you a $5 dividend, and this stock paid you a $20 dividend. And over time you realize that you're more than just the labor half. You're the owner of businesses, and you're not rowing the boat all by yourself. And if you do that for a couple of years, if you keep getting all these texts and buzzes in your pocket about all these companies that are starting to pay you an income, and you take that money and you spend it, you take yourself out to lunch, you pay your electric bill with it, you feel like you're not rowing the boat by yourself. And it trains these circuits in your brain for serotonin and dopamine. And suddenly you love to save. Suddenly you're saying, how do I get the next promotion at work so I can save more? How do I buy more of these stocks that are going to be working alongside me and paying me an income? I think what's really unfortunate about retirement accounts, which serve a purpose because you don't want people to take out the money early and hurt themselves, but people become so isolated in it. They wait until they're 65 years old and they look to see what's inside their retirement account as if it's a surprise, but they weren't active in the savings portion of it for their entire lives. They just took advantage of 401k employer matching, but they had no clue. They weren't purposeful. They weren't thinking about it. They weren't a part of it. And getting those dividends, buzzing your phone every time you get one, it's really going to change your perspective in life. You'll see yourself more as just a worker with a boss and a salary. There's going to be somebody who's fighting alongside you in that battle, and I think that's really important.
Indeed, that is important. Mr. Steve, in a world of yield farming, airdrops, and speculative assets, how do you approach portfolio management when it is not just investment but potentially your primary income? What is the risk management philosophy?
Well, I I like to think of two different kinds of risk. Is the company going to go bankrupt, or is the price just going to go up and down? And I can handle a market that disagrees with me and a price that goes up and down. I try to find companies that aren't going to go bankrupt, and I've had a couple. I've had a couple go bankrupt on me, but that's really what I try and separate. If it's a good company and it's doing well, fundamentally, I don't mind if the market disagrees with me and the price goes down. Eventually, I'm going to win in the end. Eventually, as long as they keep growing the business and they're not diluting, eventually the market's going to agree with me. So I separate that, the difference between the price going down and the company going out of business. And if the company is not going out of business, then it's just a waiting game. And if the price goes down, it's even an opportunity to buy more. The two companies that I've written about, well, the two companies that I've written about that generally went to zero, it was very unfortunate. Like I mentioned before, we've been in this 3-year manufacturing recession. Those interest rates were so high, it put a lot of companies into bankruptcy. But one thing that's amazing about it is if you have a company that increases by 10 times, like Babcock and Wilcox has done, and you have a company that goes bankrupt, it's not even, because if you put $100 in a company that goes to zero, you've lost $100. And if you put $100 in a company that goes up by 10 times, you've got $1,000. So if you're only right half the time, you still do pretty well. You turn, $200 into 1,000. That's a fantastic outcome. So that's what's possible looking at small caps. It's much harder to do that looking at the large companies that have 25 analysts apiece. When you're looking at small companies that nobody's following, it's a lot more possible to find things that have those, we call that asymmetric returns. When you lose 100, but when you win 1,000.
Interesting, Mr. Steve. So, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, my short-term goals are to grow this newsletter. I've brought it up to the point where I can pay my half of the mortgage, and I want to bring it up to the point where I can hopefully convince my wife that she doesn't have to work as well. We have 2 kids, and I want a bigger family, so maybe I can convince my wife to leave her day job, and we can focus on that part of our happily ever after story. Longer-term goals, it's I'm kind of already there between my own savings and this newsletter. I'm self-sufficient without a boss, and that's it's a place that I'd always thought about, but never realized I would ever be there.
Congratulations, Mr. Steve. Truly, truly, you found your Eureka. So, good luck to your goals and looking forward for more success. And what will be a piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Well, I would tell people in the stock market, be very careful with options. I would not tell young people to do very much with options at all. For one thing, options can they can go to zero. With certain kinds of options, you can even lose more than you've put in them. You can really cause a lot of harm with options. And also the same for leverage. I would, if you're young, I would avoid leverage, and I would avoid sports gambling. When I was a financial advisor, I had a client and he had a sub account. And as I was going over his accounts, this one was really confusing. It had a lot of small companies and none of them made any sense. And I asked him, "What is going on with this sub account?" And he said, "Oh, don't look at that. Those are my losers." So imagine somebody's sports gambling, and every week they put a couple $100 on a game. When they win, they would make money and take it, and when they lose, it would be gone. Well, he was doing that every week. He would pick a small company and put a couple $100 on it before some earnings event, before maybe it was an IPO. But he was having his fun gambling, predicting the future. And when he won, when the stock went up, he would sell it and he would take his winnings, just like a sports gambler. But when he lost, it was too painful to look at, so he would just leave it in this account. And the difference between the stock market and sports gambling is over the years, his account full of losers, all these companies that he was wrong about, that he couldn't bear the pain to look at them. Well, some of those companies eventually get their act together and they do all right. That account full of his gambling losings was up to about $80,000. And so when I see how to create the rules of the game to set yourself up to win, if you're on DraftKings or Polymarket or Kalshi and you're out there, and I'm not against trying to predict the future. I'm not against trying to do the research, get the edge, see the future, trying to make a little bit of money. I think that's fantastic. But when you do that by buying pieces of companies, sometimes even when you're wrong, you can still be right. And that's a game where heads you win and tails you also kind of win, because you still own a piece of a business in a world where most of these businesses are going to do okay if you give them enough time. So that's the advice. I don't play with options, don't play with margin, don't play with sports gambling. And if you want to have fun, but create the rules of the game where you're going to win either way. And you can find something interesting, something you want to bet on. You want to bet on quantum computing, put a couple $100 on a quantum computing stock. You want to bet on Elon Musk making satellites in space, put a couple $100 on a space stocks or underwater robotic stocks. And sometimes you're going to be right and they're going to do a lot of things quickly, and sometimes you're wrong, and even when you're wrong, you're going to come back and find out that the company did all right after a few years.
Yeah, thank you for that recommended or a piece of advice, Mr. Steve. So, can you please recommend a book or books that influenced your journey?
Oh, anything by Eric Hoffer. He's known as the longshore psychologist. That his book on the nature of the mass movements was the most influential for me. And I also really like this book by an author named Jane Jacobs. She's kind of a grandmother of urban planning. And an urban planning book might not sound very fun, but her book on the death and life of great American cities is pretty incredible. She was in a system that was failing. The United States had a lot of failed tenement projects, a lot of low income housing that made absolute devastation for the people involved. It made a terrible place to live. And she spoke out against a broken system. And her book, The Life and Death of Great American Cities, is pretty amazing too.
Well, thank you for the recommended book, Mr. Steve. So, all these concepts enter mainstream finance, like retail trading, meme stocks, or NVDS. What gets lost in translation? Can the unemployed value doesn't philosophy scale, or does it depend on being countercultural?
No, I think it absolutely can scale. This is being called the age of the retail investor. This is an era where the large shops, there's so many things happening in the world, and for one reason or another, it seems like the finance profession is unable to explain them to their supervisors. Just one company in particular, Crocs, makes those resin injected molded shoes. And they become very popular in South Korea, very popular in Japan, growing in popularity in mainland China. And for some reason, it's almost impossible for someone to explain this company to their boss at a professional fund. The shoes are just too ugly. And the opportunity keeps existing. This company stays so cheap, I believe, because the real professionals in finance just don't understand it and don't want to look at it. And there's example after example after example of this, where there's so many things that just, if somebody tries to stake their career on it, they're too embarrassed or there's too much career risk. And it's a moment where, if you're an individual and you want to express an opinion in the stock market, you can do it with your own money and you can outperform. The With the meme stocks, especially, one of my larger positions is currently categorized as a meme stock. I don't think it should be, but it's Open Door. And if they do what Carvana did, which is take a process that is currently very cumbersome, like buying a used car, and bring that online, modernize it, and put it on the internet. If Open Door can streamline this process of buying a house, it could end up as a $1 trillion company. And what's so amazing about it is nobody's even trying to compete with them. The process of buying a house in the United States is just so cumbersome so archaic. Nobody else is even trying to bring it online. It's a race with only one horse in it. You just have to hope the horse doesn't break a leg. And if that horse doesn't break a leg, there'll be $1 trillion company. And there aren't a lot of opportunities like that come along for that much technological disruption without anybody else trying to do it.
Very well said, Mr. Steve. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season as well. Comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well. Geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 in its fifth season, science 101, sex 101 in its fourth season, Spiritual Awakening, Trivia 101, Law 101, Love, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and My Bible Verses 101 on my baby podcast. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Steve, when everything is volatile, markets, opportunities, even personal conviction, what is the one guiding principle or belief that remains constant and guides your decisions?
Oh, the number one thing is to know what you own. If you buy a company because somebody else recommended it, well, then when the price falls, you're going to sell. You're going to get shaken out of it. But if you buy that company because you know it and you believe in it and you have the courage of your convictions, then when the price falls, you won't be tempted to sell because you'll know that it's a high quality business and you want to keep hold of it. So the only solution in a volatile market is to know what you own. And so that's why I think there's an unlimited appetite for a research newsletter to write about companies and to help people do their due diligence.
Indeed, people invest like a Warren Buffett style. Well, you can learn a lot from that, of course, to Mr. Steve as well. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now, Mr. Steve?
Yes, you can find me on Substack at the Unemployed Value Degen, and you can find me on Twitter as the Unemployed Value Degen. I'm in both places, and they each have a link to the other. And thank you very much for the opportunity, Daniel.
No worries at all, Mr. Steve. Yes, people, let's support Mr. Steve because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this to rise. And I have one more question, Mr. Steve, before I will let you go. When the former players are climbing corporate ladders or hitting a traditional milestone, and how do you maintain confidence in your alternative path? What is your internal narratives about success?
Oh, the internal narrative about success. Well, the nice thing about that is my wife is an economics professor, and one of her areas of research is human happiness. And the number one predictor of human happiness is if you're healthy and the people you love are healthy. And I'm so blessed to have my wife and my two children, and everybody's happy and healthy. So that is the number one determinant of happiness, and everything, salary, always comes secondary to those sorts of things. So make sure to appreciate the ones that you love.
Very well said, Mr. Steve. Yes, people, health is wealth. So, Mr. Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you